Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Welcome. Great to have you with us on the show today. There's a lot going on.
Just a little bit.
1,100 names in the transfer portal, but of course coaches are in the transfer portal as well.
Coaches are in the transfer portal.
Nico Medved, takes the Colorado State NCAA tournament run, and he parlays it into going back to his alma mater, Minnesota.
Yes.
Ben Holcomb takes Ben McCollum takes the 1 year at Drake, 1 year at Drake, and turns it into Iowa. And
Bennett Sturtz has come on with him from Drake.
He's going to go with him
from northwestern Missouri Valley to Drake, all of a sudden to Iowa.
Oh, look at Duncan Robinson. Robinson played at Williams. Division III. He was an EAF. That's how you pronounce it, EAFs. All right. And went to Michigan and parlayed that into, a rarity, a Division III to Michigan to the NBA with the Miami Heat.
By the way, speaking of D3, that is where St. Francis now is.
I want to get that in a moment.
We'll get to that in a moment.
Because that's a big one.
Also, coaching-wise, Richard Pitino is now leaving New Mexico for Xavier. And then you have VCU. Looks like they're going to be adding Phil Martelli Jr.
from Bryant
as their new head coach from Bryant. And joining him on the staff, looks like it will be Phil Martelli Sr. will be coming with him as well. And then other coaches, Sean Miller is now taking over from Xavier to Texas. We have Will Wade was introduced at NC State, and it also looks like Fran McCaffrey will become the new head coach at Penn, his alma mater. So, coming back to Palestra.
He's got issues there.
Yes.
Fran has some issues there, because I want to start with, I'll go there first. Steve Donahue is a terrific coach.
Yes.
Steve Donahue is a terrific guy. But Penn has been putting the same standards on what they're doing with their athletes. Yale and Harvard aren't doing that. Right? In terms of financial help, they're not allowing it as much, and Yale and Harvard are. So who has the advantage right now in the Ivy League? Yale and Harvard. So Steve has had to fight from behind on that. And he ended up losing his job because of it. But he is an excellent coach. He wants to keep coaching.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now. Right? He's the kind of personality and understanding for the game that I have a lot of confidence in. If Fran goes back there, Fran will do fine. But Fran is going to have some challenges there.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to be on the same level playing field as some of the playing court as some of the other coaches within his own conference.
Yeah.
You're going to find that no matter what. Money is always going to play a role, but in the Ivy League, this really plays a role.
I was going to say, you've got
all this.
Even the Cornells of the world, like they bring in a lot of good talent. Cornell's usually pretty good at basketball. I've seen that for years. They beat Syracuse all the time, and it always pained me. But yeah, so
now Kevin Willard. Kevin Willard is doing something that I have a high respect for how he's doing this, because what he is doing is he is outlining in press conferences how unattractive the Maryland job is. Really? Okay. It can't be that bad of a job. You're in the Sweet 16, but he keeps outlining all the issues.
He's outlining the negatives
that they have. In other words, he's airing out dirty laundry in public.
Yep.
Maybe he feels like he has to, or look, everybody knows he's a candidate at Villanova. We all know that.
Yeah.
What's going to be interesting moving forward, as you mentioned, Richard Pitino, who's one of the good guys out there. In this conference, you talk to other coaches, everybody likes Richard. And I know whenever I've been around him, I liked him too, but it's, just that's all casual conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. He goes to Xavier. You've got Shaka Smart at Marquette, and you've got Villanova open. We're going into the revenue sharing era. As soon as we get through the April 7th week, it's not going to be like I doubt it's going to be April 7th. She says yes.
It'll be
it'll be a little bit of a process here.
Mid to late April
to sign this. I think it might be the week. And then on July 1, the revenue sharing era begins. If you are a non-football school, and I mean non-football in terms of like you're not serious about it. You're FCS, like you're serious based on your level, but you're losing money. Your revenue share dollars are going to be weighted toward basketball.
Yes.
And that is where you can have – it's going to be interesting to see in the next 5 years whether that turns out to be a payoff for the Marquettes, the Xaviers, the Villanovas, maybe even Georgetown, that are not – FBS football schools, but their bread and butter is basketball. And in the revenue sharing world, whether that's going to make a difference on player acquisition, that's where they are at this particular point.
Yeah. And when it comes to, you mentioned Patino, one of his former players is in the portal from New Mexico. He is the guy who is now the quote-unquote top guy to look at when it comes to players in college basketball, Donovan Dent.
Yeah, excellent point guard.
20 points
really
a game.
Good point guard.
Good point guard, but the point guard slot is the one that's got the biggest amount of buzz in the portal. Of course, you had Ben Sturtz enter, but
Elliot Cadeau went in yesterday from North Carolina.
Dedon Thomas from UNLV is in the portal. Donovan Dent is in the portal. There are a lot of really good point guards in the portal, so it is going to be something to monitor and watch. Those are the guys that everyone's looking at, especially Dent, who showed pretty much in the tournament that he's really good player, and now his
biggest problem in the tournament was turnovers. He turned it over too often.
Yes. So if he can change that, that is something interesting to watch. Speaking of, Sanon has already committed from Arizona State to St. John's.
Yeah.
He committed an hour after into the portal. Him and his agent were asked why did they commit so fast to St. John's. He said, and I quote, Madison Square Garden, Rick Pitino, I don't know what else I could ask for. It's a pretty fair statement.
That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
I respect that.
Right.
So,
but the question you have to ask is: I enter the portal. How much contact was there before he entered the portal when it's done that fast?
Yes.
So you always have to ask that question. Everybody turns a blind eye to it. But.
And
so we're in the portal for 72 minutes, and we're already done. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd those visits go? What visits?
Yeah.
There weren't any. Okay.
I wonder. Do you know how Tucker DeVree happened to know what was going on in Indiana? I wonder.
Well, that's a little different ball.
I know, but still.
And just like the point guard going from Drake, Ben Sturtz.
No, it's so interesting. Drake to Iowa. Wonder who he knows at Iowa now.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
But I think there's certain things you expect.
Yeah.
That are going to happen. Those are among the expected. That was always. I always said about Rich Rodriguez at Michigan, if he had been allowed to bring Pat White with him, it would have been one season. It may have changed the perception of what was going on there.
Yeah.
Instead, he had square peg, round hole. He had Ryan Mallett. Well, Ryan Mallett, who's a better pro prospect than Pat White, is not the kind of player that plays quarterback for Rich Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, another point guard in the portal alongside the Cadeaus of the world who we've brought up, who I want your thoughts on real quick. Jalen Jackson played for Purdue Fort Wayne. We saw him here.
I like him. And he can shoot. And he can shoot. I think he is somebody that has all the earmarks of moving up into a Power 5 and can play. He's got quickness. He's got a good shot. I think he has a good feel for the game. It's not just that I saw him the game in the Jordan Center. I saw him down in Daytona as well because they were part of that tournament as well. So I saw him play with 3 games,
something like that,
this year when it was all said and done. And usually with me, there's a lot more said than done. And I liked him. I mean, every time I saw him play, I just felt like he had a really good feel for the game.
So he's someone else to watch as well in that point guard slot where there's a lot of names there. You mentioned Jalen Jackson, Cadeau, Malachi Smith from Dayton is in the portal as well. Kwamari Peterson from, I believe, Elon or ETSU. I don't know the logo. It's an E. That's what I know. I know. I'm disappointing you every single day. plus Sturts, Dent, and Thomas are also in the portal. So the top point guards in the portal right now, plus Josh Dix and Bryce Hopkins are the 4th and 5th best players in the portal, along with the top 3 guards.
Well, a guy that people should take a long look at in terms of making a jump, that I think would be an interesting player to look at, and I don't know if he's in the portal or not, is Juan Cranford.
Juan Cranford.
Why? Because St. Francis yesterday announced that they are going to Division III after this season. They're going to play this season.
Next season.
This season they will be in the Northeast Conference. Just talked to Rob Krimmel. And when I talked to him, I talked to him for about 20, 25 minutes. 10 days ago. He was on top of the world.
Yeah, they made the tournament.
Right? He was on top of the world. He was getting ready to play Alabama State. They were in. The publicity they got, and then they played a terrific game with Alabama State where they lost on a last-second crazy, freaky shot.
80-something foot heave that gets caught and laid up.
Yep. And then this happened at the University of Hartford, 4 years ago?
It was a few years ago.
John Gallagher, and I remember texting John about this, about just what a raw deal they got. And, John goes in there, and in his conference in America East, it was always tough to get past Vermont. John Becker, before that, Tommy Brennan, Vermont. And John was able to get him past everybody. And I think they beat UMass Lowell in their championship game that year. And they get to the tournament. And have you ever met Johnny?
I have not.
Dick and I, the nickname we always have for him is Johnny Gal. So John Gallagher, Johnny Gal, is personality personified. He's just one of the absolutely, personality. I want to tell you right now, you sit down with him, you spend a good chunk of the time laughing. And so he gets to the tournament. And he wows everybody at the tournament because he's glib. He's honest. And if you're a media person, he's kind of a dream guy to sit down and listen to him talking at a press conference. You're like, I kind of wish that press conference wasn't over with. Well, then they're done. And 3 weeks later, they announced they're going Division III at Hartford.
It was Hartford in 21. They defeated UMass Lowell, made the tournament. May 6th, they announced the Board of Regents in West Hartford. They were going to drop to D3.
You act like I don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm not saying that.
Every time we turn around, it's a fact-checking.
They, by the way, took on Baylor in the tournament that year.
Right.
That was their 2021.
And Baylor won the national title. And now Johnny landed on his feet. He's the head coach of Manhattan.
Yeah.
Okay. And, and he's doing all right. They're doing fine. He's a really good coach. Now here's Rob's situation. Maybe less time. It wasn't May 6th. But here we are 10 days, 2 weeks later, and they're just saying they're going to Division III. Be prepared moving forward that's not the last one to do this.
I was going to bring this up.
Because
it seems like it's going to be a common occurrence for a lot of schools in the St. Francis realm where, we've discussed the finances that are going to be coming down real soon for a lot of programs. It's going to be tough to be in D1 and be as competitive as you need to be financially stable.
What's interesting about the St. Francis campus is that 40% of the students on that campus are athletes.
It's crazy.
And that's an interesting number. When you're at St. Francis or any other school that is working within that level, I don't care whether it's Northeast Conference, America East, whatever, okay, you don't have football to help you out. It is a financial drain to have football. I mean, Villanova, it's a financial drain. In fact, one of the untold secrets about FCS football, Villanova's level, is that the further you go in the tournament, the more expensive it gets. You lose more money the further you go. They don't give you hey, you made the semifinals. It's great. That's more money. And we're playing where? We have to get a plane.
Where? North Dakota?
Go where? And, of course, you get to the championship game, and everybody in the university wants to go, so that's an additional plane. That's more money. You lose money. It's the way it is. And on the level of St. Francis, Northeast Conference, Hartford, America East, football is like the other sports on campus. It loses money. Basketball's the name of your game. Let's get to the House settlement. What happens to be one of the provisions of the House settlement? The back pay between 2017 and 2023, where 60% of the money for that will come out of the NCAA's reserves. The other 40% will be in NCAA distributions and reduced distributions over a 10-year span. A reduction in distribution to a Big Ten school is a dent. But it's a dent that that's more palatable when you're the SEC or the Big Ten. The Big Ten to this point, with 4 games coming, okay, so I'm including the 4 games, has already earned 20 units this year.
It's pretty good.
Right? Now, somebody wins.
It keeps going.
Right? It's going to go up to 21, maybe 22 units. All right. Well, if you're in the Northeast Conference, you got 1. If you're America East, you got 1. That's it.
It's not a lot.
Okay? To divide up with everybody else in your conference. What's America East? 10 schools?
America East.
And what's Northeast Conference is what? That 10 schools? 8 to 10. I think it's 10.
America East Conference is 9 schools.
9 schools.
And then what was the other one you asked me about?
Northeast Conference.
Northeast Conference is, you can click through, it is also 9 schools.
Okay. So you have to divide up that money 9 ways. St. Francis gets in. The entire distribution is not theirs. Now, they don't have to pay for the plane. They don't have to pay for the hotel, the per diems, things like that to get in. But the NCAA distribution goes to the conference, which is then distributed by everybody else. As opposed to 20 units, which, by the way, multiplies over 6 years. Now, I know the Big Ten has to divide it up 18 ways. But that's 20 units. And that's a 6-year lifespan of those 20 units. Right? Rolling in with the other units you earned in years past.
Every year, then you add more and more and more.
Right.
It's a lot.
Right. So, in other words, the 4 teams in the Sweet 16 have earned now. This will be the 3rd unit each that they've earned. When Penn State advanced 2 years ago, they earned the Big Ten 2 units. You know, and when you're in a power conference, the rich do get richer because you have more opportunities. Look at 7 Sweet 16 teams in the Southeastern Conference. Well, 7 means that's already 14 units. They've got a minimum of 21 units to now go with the guys that lost. So you're up over 30 units now for the Southeastern Conference, divided by 16. Right? So they can absorb, to be honest with you, with a relative ease, the House settlement, and for them it is a dent. When you go inside the back of the car and you tap it out, that's about what they're doing in the Big Ten and the SEC. In the Northeast Conference, they might as well have caved in the entire side of the car.
All of a sudden, you have no more passenger side of the entire car.
What is going to happen with the Patriot League? What is going to happen with the Summit League? What is going to happen with the Horizon? Now, I think some of them are in better shape than others, but those are all single bid leagues. Which means, for the most part, unless an Oakland makes a run like they did last year, you're going to be dividing up that share among multiple mouths, as opposed to lots of shares over multiple mouths. So the rich and powerful get more rich and become more powerful. St. Francis, Rob Krimel's done a phenomenal job there. I'm talking with Josh Cohen out at USC. Josh Cohen started his career at St. Francis. Then he went to the portal. He went to UMass. He did visit here, by the way. He went to UMass, and then after 1 year there, he transferred to USC. And I had a Penn State shirt on, and we're courtside at the Galen Center. And they were just doing their sprints back and forth, warming up. And he stops. He looks at me, he goes, Penn State Radio? I said, yeah. He says, Steve Jones? I said, yeah. He says, I said, Josh, how are you? Because, I mean, I knew it was. I said, how are you? And we talked for maybe 5 minutes. And when he was done, I said something about Rob Krimmel. And he goes, oh, he's the greatest guy. You know, he says, I can't say enough great things about him as a coach, a person, and everything. He says, if you get a chance, you know, tell him. So when I talked to Rob 10 days ago, I brought that up, that conversation. He says, yeah, I know. He says, because when we won the championship, he said he texted me. Right? But what kind of opportunity does Josh Cohen get? I know he's tall, so he's going to get an opportunity someplace. But there are going to be certain players that the opportunity to play Division I basketball is at St. Francis. Yeah. Now you're not going to have that, just like you don't have that any longer at Hartford. It is a big deal to them to win the Northeast Conference Championship. Yeah. Okay. It is a big deal to Hartford that they won the America East. I mean, when Hartford in women's basketball had Jennifer Rosati as their coach, oh, they're making the tournament, and Jen Rosati, and all is a big deal, and the campus feels great. I mean, how much have we talked about the University of Hartford since this happened? We haven't talked about them at all. Nope. You don't get talked about. All right. College sports, look, it's expensive. Okay? But college sports is not the university. But, and I will quote Bobby Bowden here, because I believe he's absolutely correct, it is the front porch of the house. Okay? You don't buy the house based on the front porch. But you go in and take a look at the house and consider buying it because of the front porch. Right? You can't tie together great academic universities all over the country, especially, of course, here. Yeah. All right. But every week that you're on TV, Penn State makes a run to the college football playoff Final Four. The entire country is watching Penn State, right? You got 6 to 7 million people watching Penn State play SMU. You've got 10 to 15 million watching Penn State play Boise State. You've got 15 to 20 million watching Penn State play Notre Dame. Well, each week, Penn State's out there, Penn State's out there, Penn State's out there. The name is on your screen for hours at a time, along with that of SMU and Boise State and Notre Dame and so forth. But it's out there all the time, seeing it. And it may have been 2 hours in Dayton and then 2 hours on ESPN the week before in the championship game. But that's more publicity that St. Francis has had in a long time. Now, I don't know what it does for their enrollment, but at least gets the name out there. You're no longer going to have the name out there. You're going to be a small Catholic college in Loretto, Pennsylvania. All right? And you're talking about a program, and as Rob said to me, he says, Steve, he says, we've had, great tradition here. Maurice Stokes, right? Porter, Kevin Porter, all these guys that have played there, right? Along the way. And it's to see that happen, and it's not going to be the last one. You're going to see between now, I'd say in the next year, they won't be the only ones. And there are going to be others that are going to make tough decisions on this, that's saying we can't compete in this anymore. We can't do this. We're losing money on it. We can't. I mean, I look at the Patriot schools. Yeah. Now the Patriot schools have a lot of donors and are better financed in some ways. But that NCAA distribution number, what is a dent for somebody is a chasm for somebody else. And it changes budgets without question. And it may not affect the basketball program. It might affect how many programs you do have. There's suddenly out of nowhere you're not going to carry pick a list of sports you might not have anymore because you're going to be getting less money. It makes a difference. as to what you're doing, because these schools don't get help from their football program. They're the ones that, basketball absolutely carries the day for them. Mm-hmm. And this new world is difficult. And Josh Cohen's at USC. Mm-hmm. He's not at St. Francis. I'm not picking on Josh. I'm explaining that his pathway is. But right, for him personally, it's the right move to make. It got him into the Big Ten.
Patriot League. Who is at Lehigh? CJ McCollum.
Yeah.
What happens to him if that doesn't exist, that pathway for him to then make his way even into the tournament and then to put his name on the map?
In today's world, CJ McCollum probably would have transferred after his freshman or sophomore year.
Yeah.
He didn't really – he'd have to sit out a year back when he played, because Penn State played against – Penn State beat Lehigh with CJ. Yeah. And CJ was a good player. He didn't have the best game against Penn State, but you could see he was a really good player.
But what happens to him if he doesn't have the opportunity to then play on that big stage and beat Duke?
Right. And he's turned it into really a terrific NBA career. And it's all about, that's why the kid going from Division II to Iowa.
Bennett Sturts.
All right. This whole thing has played out beautifully for him. He gets to showcase it on a night in and night out basis against some of the top college talent in the country.
Yeah.
So I feel awful about the St. Francis thing. We're fortunate here that Penn State is in the have category in everything. Mm-hmm. Oh, men's basketball. Just slow down, okay? It's like I always love the negative, the negative crowd out there. My favorite is when somebody looks at me, they should drop the sport. Like, oh, really? Well, and how are we going to pay for the ones you love? Over here in the back, just asking.
And then it'll become even more dependent on football.
Yeah, like cut me a break. Mm-hmm. I always love when I hear they put the TV money on their line. Well, they're on 30 times. Okay. The networks don't pay for the sports you want. No. The networks do not pay for this. You may see your sport on there. The network is not paying for it. Okay, they're paying for football, and then men's basketball is part of the contract. Mm-hmm. That's why it ends up on that line. Yeah. But that's the way it is. And I hate to see this. Division III is Division III. Mm-hmm. I'll hear, well, there's really good basketball and football Division III. I'm like, not really. I'm seriously not really. I'm not real. I'm not trying to put anything down. There's a reason why the top level is the top level, and there's no doubt those who are going this route are going with the amateur scholarship decision as opposed to the money decision. What revenue sharing dollars can St. Francis give? They can't. There are going to be others going to have to sit down and make that hard decision. And that's a shame.
It's not the first. It's not going to be the last.
No, it won't be the last.
I would expect quite a few different, as you mentioned, teams to announce similar things going forward over the next year or two. We might see more happen.
I think the next year, because the economic reality of revenue sharing sets in. Mm-hmm. And I think you've got a lot of athletic directors sitting there saying, I don't know what we do here. Yeah. How can we afford to do this? Even let's go to a Power 4 level. I've talked about Pitt. Well, Pitt was here. I had to make a little quick speech last night to a group. And somebody brought up that at that point, Pitt was beating Penn State in baseball. He's a Pitt grad. Yeah. And I looked over and I said, that's great. I said, and Pitt's had, a great year in women's volleyball. I said, they've always had really good baseball of late. And I looked at him, I said, and the problem is, I said, you've got, in the new world economy, I said, your program has a lot of issues to overcome economically in the new world. And he looked at me and I said, let's start with this. I said, even your own conference is going to get you $7 million a year less. And he looked at me and, oh, boy. I said, now I'm not saying it's right, wrong, okay, because Clemson and Florida State forced this. where they get a kick up in revenue share because of TV ratings, records, things like that. Well, that means the vast majority of that conference is going to be seeing 7% less. That's just the beginning. What did I just talk about with the House settlement?
They're going to have to pay a lot more up.
There's going to be, first of all, the ACC, thank goodness for Duke, because, let's see, North Carolina earned 2 units. Clemson got 1.
Louisville got 1.
1. So that's 4. Thank goodness you've got Duke, right? Duke now gets you up to 7. Duke may win the whole thing, but guess what? You're not gonna go past 10, right?
And that gets divided up, and then it gets
it gets divided up by 17. Okay, as opposed to what the Big Ten is going to get 20 plus, the SEC is going to get 30 plus. Okay? If you don't have Duke, you've got really nothing. I mean, you didn't end up with much, and one's a first 4. In North Carolina got 2 because of that. Clemson and Louisville both lost. That's 4. They're up to 7 now because Duke is now about to earn its 3rd unit. You're already going to reduce for everybody by 7% except for the top 4. Okay? Your TV contract is baked into 2036 with an easier, not completely easy, but a slightly easier route starting in 2030. Last I checked, that's 5 years away. You're going to fall, and now you have to do revenue sharing. Where do you come up with the $20.5 million? And again, you don't have to come up with. You don't have to come up with $20.5 million.
Yeah, it's just the number.
But do you sit there and say we can only afford $12 to $14 million? I mean, the American Conference has set a floor at 10.
Yeah.
Is there a floor set in the ACC? I'd like to know that. Is there a floor?
That's a good question.
If you are Wake Forest, what do you do? Can you afford $20.5 million? No, the answer is no. Which means if you have the ability to offer fewer dollars, what's your odds of getting better players? Especially when we're in a draft season right now. I found this one to be interesting. Luther Burton.
Yeah.
You want to know what's being held against him? His loyalty to Missouri. You want to know why?
Why?
Because when Brady Cook was a quarterback 2 years ago, he put together a phenomenal season.
It was incredible.
Right? This year it was a mixed bag at quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the reasons why door open for Bo. So he had not the same results. And they're saying, well, because he stayed there and was loyal. I draft him higher because of that. Yeah. If that guy's that loyal,
he's willing to play with
right,
not as good a quarterback.
Okay, guess what? I can see on tape, like 2023, sucker can flat out play. Okay, yeah. I don't need to look at 2024.
No.
Okay, but there was an article in there about people quietly holding his Missouri loyalty against him because it cost him in the draft. This is what we're doing now?
Ridiculous.
This is what we're doing. So the guy stays someplace.
He's penalized for being a good human being.
He is a terrific player that's penalized because he's loyal. Well, we're all out for ourselves. Well, okay, except for Jerry. What? He's bounced around. He went to Jordan Center or some other station, came back. He's just kind of always about Jerry. But, I mean, you're being penalized for loyalty?
Crazy.
That makes no sense. And I'm talking, look, the vast majority of people that have seen him play are not doing that. No. But I actually read an article about it. I think it was in the Athletic. The Athletic, right? And I'm reading like going, what kind of bizarro world is this? To me, that's a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Loyalty. Now, sometimes it gets you in trouble. Right? And I'll give you an example. You are the UConn SID on the Dan Hurley situation. Well, I don't know the UConn SID to save my soul. I've never met the person. I have no idea. Right? But he's loyal to the university, loyal to the athletic department, and loyal to Dan Hurley. Hurley, look, he is the ticking emotional time bomb, okay?
As we've seen.
Right. And it does put the SID in a rough spot. Now, the SID, I guess, apologized yesterday about, like, I shouldn't have, whatever. But I'll say this for the person. He's loyal. He's loyal to his coach. He's loyal to his program. May not have handled it the right way, whatever, but it was put in a bad spot.
Yeah, Dan put him in a rough position.
Right? Put him in a really bad spot. But he's loyal. And there's something to be said for that. Because I think loyalty is a lost art. I'd like to see a little bit more of it here in the station. No. Between you and Jason Lord. I have to have surgery. I have the knives taken out of my back after every show. Just kidding. No, but loyalty means something. I mean, you've been around and seen. I mean, Dick Girardi and I are loyal to one another and to the people on the broadcast. You, Bob, Roger, okay, Jayhawk. Okay, Jack and I think everybody knows Jack Ham and I, extremely loyal to each other, just like Dick Girardi and I am. But we're also to Roger and to Brian and to Bob. Okay? Because that's always been, quote, our makeup.
Yeah.
Right? And I put a price on loyalty. I was brought up in a household where two things were drummed into us. Theft and fraud. No, that's just, two things were drummed into us by our parents over and over again. It's my brother and I. And it was drummed into us over and over and over. We always heard the same things over and over from our parents. Work ethic, loyalty, work ethic. Now, you don't be loyal to, okay, the crime family.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's loyalty in a negative and a positive.
Right. But loyalty to people, and loyalty is a two-way street. And it means something. It's always meant something to me. This guy goes out, like, he's put in an impossible spot. But we are now in an era, let's go back to transfer portal and coaches moving, where it's every person for themselves. In the end, is it every person for themselves? Sure it is. But once you get involved in something, to me, there's got to be some sort of bond and loyalty. And when Mike Rhodes took the job, the first time we talked, I brought up work ethic and loyalty. So that's how I was brought up, and he was brought up the same way. All right? When I had my first meeting with James, that's exactly, we sat down in the office, boom, just the two of us. It's one of the things I brought up right away. Now, it's up to you to prove it. You can talk to the person in the initial meeting about it. It's up to you to then prove it. Because I can tell you right now, the loyalty in return from James Franklin, the loyalty in return from Mike Rhodes, or before that Micah Shrewsbury, or before that Jim Ferry, or Pat Chambers, I can go through the list. It's always been there. It's always been there. And we're in an era where you want the fans to stay loyal, but boy, there's a lot of movement out there by the parts that they're supposed to be cheering for. You're a North Carolina fan and you want to be loyal to Hubert Davis, and Elliot Cadeau's now leaving.
I got an example.
Caleb Love left for Arizona. It's like there's a long list.
Well, I have an example of loyalty, which as a Syracuse fan has brought me a lot of joy, which is we found out last night Donovan Freeman, star freshman center for Syracuse who played incredibly well, and J.J. Starling, the two shining lights for Syracuse, returning for next season.
Right.
Both coming back, so the two of them, Keon Anthony, and...
Why do you think the fans here embraced John Harrah?
Yeah.
John Harrah had offers. Right? Okay. Michigan really wanted John Harrah. They did. He stayed. The fans are going to forever love him here. And you're going to feel the same way about the two Syracuse guys till they bag you at midseason and leave.
You know who else everyone here in Happy Valley has had a lot of love for, who decided to stay an extra year? Drew Aller. They love that. Like, that is a big thing.
Well,
and that's a different scenario in terms of it was either the NFL or here,
right.
But he decided to stay, and that means something.
It means a lot, and that's why. Let's go to the positives of money.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of positives of money.
Yeah.
And, by the way, your Lamborghini is very nice.
Oh, thank you. You mean my Hot Wheels? Yes.
I didn't see how big it was. But this is where money is a positive, and this is where the St. Francis's of the world don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the 4 teams that made the college football Final Four last year, Penn State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas, what was one of the keys to each one of them that was universal? They took their money, NIL at this point, and used it for roster retention.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking out there, Emeka Ibuka, he's back.
Mm-hmm.
Trevion Henderson, back. All right. Carnell Tate, back. Right. JTT, Tuliamalo, back. Okay. Sawyer, back. Right. That's how they use their money. Oh, yeah. It's a big splash when Caleb Downs decides he wants to go, right? It's a big splash when Quinson Judkins goes, you get Will Howard. But you look across the board, Penn State, Drew Aller, back. Nicholas Singleton, back. Katron Allen, back. All right? Drew Shelton, back. Venga Ioane, back. Denai Dennis Sutton, back. Okay? You're going through all of this, right? A.J. Harris, back. Zakee Wheatley, back. Okay? You're going through the list of guys that returned your roster retention money. Zane Durant, back.
Yeah.
Okay? Where instead of going to the draft or transferring someplace else, your roster retention money kept them here.
Mm-hmm.
And so Zane Durant's going to play 4 years at Penn State. Denai Dennis Sutton's going to play 4 years. Drew Aller's going to play 4 years. Katron Allen, 4 years. Right? Nicholas Singleton, 4 years. That's the old college model that you're using money to preserve the old college model by. Then, of course, Zakee Wheatley's going to play 4 years here. Okay? And you sit back and you look at the old college model, and then you add in, Kyron Hudson, you add in Devontae Ross, because Penn State doesn't bring in a lot of transfers.
You add in the piece, like I just said with Ohio State, they add in Caleb Downs, they add in Judkins, they add in Will Howard, all of a sudden, they're good to go. They add in a piece here or there in places where they think, you know what, this would be a good addition.
And Notre Dame was the same way. Notre Dame had an older team. In talking with the Notre Dame people, they talked about the money to keep Watts and those guys in place to play. Then they added in Riley Leonard at quarterback and so forth. But they kept their parts in play. Texas was the same way, right? So, but the problem is at the St. Francis's of the world, you don't have that money to keep the roster. You just don't. You don't have the ability to compete with somebody else or another entity like a pro league and say, now what do we do? And that's where the money can be. It's a big problem for the Pitts in a Power 4 situation because they're not going to have as much as other people. It's a problem for the St. Francis's who look at the landscape and say, we can't do this anymore, and we're going to go to Division III. But if you're at the highest levels and have that money and you have the pipeline to keep that money coming in, your ability to keep not just the ability to go out and get somebody, but your ability to keep them. Those 4 schools, roster retention was critical in all 4 cases, and it's critical for this upcoming season as well. Yes, it's a big deal when you're like, Oregon got Dylan Gabriel. Well, that entire team is not – well, they've got a few more transfers than other people do. But you're looking at because I had to sit down. I worked ahead on some things. So it paid off every step of the way until I got to the Orange Bowl. But I did do a workup on Texas because I had to try and stay ahead. And like I always put down, transferred from. Well, same thing. They don't have that many guys that are transfers in there.
There's a couple that come in. They had like Isaiah Bond was one of the very few they had.
Came in from Alabama.
That was pretty much it.
Right. And to be honest with you, he was like okay.
But even then, it's like they grab the one or two players here and there.
Right.
And they keep everyone through. And as you said, keeping someone for 4 years is big, and that's what we discussed yesterday with college basketball is you retain a player.
Right.
You can develop the player. And there's something to be said about development that people seem to be blanking on. They're like, oh, they should go and get a better opportunity elsewhere. Sometimes staying in a system and developing means the world.
And in Penn State football, player development is one of the cornerstones of what James Franklin does. So let's get now to the other part of free agency, and let's go back to what you started with, the coaching carousel. You cannot put a price on, to me, on James Franklin being here and now his 12th season. All of us, of course, got used to Joe Paterno being here for such a long time. 46 seasons as a head coach, 60 seasons overall. That's never going to happen again. And as I said when they beat Northwestern that day, I said, you'll never see this again, one man, one school, 400 wins. And that's a fact. It's just not going to happen. At least not at this level it's going to happen. When you have stability and you're good with the potential to be great, you've got something special there. The continuity of having James Franklin there all the time, where he takes over a bad situation, 63 scholarships. I think the second year was 70 to 75 or something like that. Right? Rides it out, and then starts winning 11 games on a fairly consistent basis. We know, I talked about the speaking engagement last night. I spoke glowingly about you. And one of the questions I got, can they beat Ohio State and Michigan? I said, well, they don't have Michigan on the schedule. I said, and I'll get to Ohio State when that week comes up. I said, teams change every year. That's exactly how he answered it. Right. All right, so let's take that out of the equation. He's beating everybody else. I mean,
he beats Wisconsin.
Right.
He beats Maryland.
Right. Well, he beat Boise State. He beat SMU. He's been to 2 Big Ten championship games. He's won a Cotton Bowl. He's won 2 Fiesta Bowls. He's won a Rose Bowl. It's like, as I say to people, I said, last I checked, when I went into the stadiums those days, I kind of felt those were big games. I said, how many big games you want him to win? Right. And you can't put a price on that stability and that standard of excellence. And I appreciate the fans wanting that one more. Okay? He wants that one more. The players want that one more. You, the fans, want that one more. I got it. So now let's flip that over. You just can't put a price on him being here and being here as the guy the entire time.
If you're a recruit and you hear Penn State, you hear James Franklin.
Right, but 12 years. Okay. And they're in the position they are right now because he's been here the entire time. This is his vision. Now let's flip it over to what we just talked about. Richard Pitino goes to Xavier. Now, we all know when he left Minnesota that New Mexico was probably going to be, New Mexico for Steve Alford and for Richard Pitino has been a good job to have to kind of
it's a good program.
Get your career back on track, the whole thing. Ryan Odom takes the VCU job. He's briefly, takes the Virginia job after briefly being at VCU.
After, by the way, beating Virginia.
Danny Sprinkles 1 year at Utah State. Right? Okay, Darian DeVries 1 year at West Virginia.
Ben McCollum 1 year at Drake.
Right. Okay? And now I get to Penn State basketball, which I've talked about. Penn State needs Mike to be here. And Mike needs time to do what he needs to do. Because a major setback for this program in this decade, as I outlined the other day on the show, he's the fourth coach in this decade for Penn State.
Yeah.
Well, you can't get anything going in any traction when you're changing jockeys all the time. You just can't. And this isn't the Kentucky Derby where we're going to take suddenly, hey, Flavien Pratt's available. Let's put him on this horse and let's see how he does. All right? It just doesn't work that way. At this program, with everything, they've got a different recruiting situation than other people do. Okay? If you're Minnesota, your knock on Minnesota is quite simple.
Yes.
Until St. Thomas elevated.
Amen. They were the one.
They were the only Division I school in the state. How many Division I schools are in this state?
Oh,
right? And let's just go to the southeastern part. Last I checked, it's a state that is Villanova, Temple, LaSalle, St. Joe's, right? Penn. In the western part of the state, you got Pitt, you got Duquesne. We just talked about St. Francis. I mean, they're different levels, so you're not competing against St. Francis for talent. But that's your competition within the state, in a state that is not really great in high school basketball.
No.
Right?
It's not on the same level as many of those states.
In the southeastern part of the state, that's where, for the most part, that's where the talent really is. It's also where most of those schools I talked about happen to be. But that's for the most part where the talent in the state is. Doesn't mean you don't get a guy out of Harrisburg, you don't get a guy out of Pittsburgh. It's going to happen. Okay? But you're competing with a lot of people to do it. It's always been, for Penn State, something they've had to fight to overcome on the basketball side. But you've had October 24th, 2020. You fire the coach. Okay? I'm not going to get into the circumstances, right, wrong, and different, okay?
And the timeline yesterday as well.
Right. But you lose an entire recruiting class. You have an interim head coach. Well, the interim head coach isn't going to be able to recruit. Okay? Because you're the interim head coach. You're not going to be able to recruit. So, boom, okay, cross that one out. Now you get a new coach in there, kind of starts in April, fights from behind, whatever. Goes through they try and get as many transfers as possible, get them in here, kind of fight. They end up, I think a game under 500, something like that. Then they do get a recruiting class. All right, boom. They go out there. They do make the NCAA tournament. The place is on a high. Here we go. This is great. Coach leaves, goes to Notre Dame. Right? Recruiting class that boom, goes with him. There's no recruiting class again. Right? He comes in. Mike does. Fourth coach in how many years? Boom. He's got to get 10 guys in 59 days. Does. They do get a recruiting class. Okay. It's not all this particular time, like right now, one's left. The other three are in the transfer portal. Okay. I mean, that's today's college basketball. Don't pretend. I always love when I can't believe it. They blew it. Like, what are they saying in North Carolina about Elliot Cadeau, who started 68 games in his career? Did Hubert Davis blow it? Right? Really? I mean, Caleb Love's at Arizona. Did Hubert Davis blow it? I don't know. Hey, there's 1,100 names in the transfer portal. Do you think your program's the only one that is suffering recruiting losses because of the transfer portal? Wake up. Okay, that's not the real world. Mike is a quality coach. Mike is a quality man. All right? Okay. Mike needs time. You can't keep changing all the time, because that's all Penn State has had this decade on the basketball side is change. Every time you turn around, there's change, there's change, there's change. Right? When you've had 4 coaches in a decade for a variety of circumstances, where does that get you? And for everybody who wants to change, oh, get rid of them. Bring in somebody else. Is that no?
Is the other side of the grass greener?
Right. I mean, I think everybody presumes that you're going to bring somebody in, they're going to bring Miracle Grow with them.
Everyone assumes if you bring in a new coach, it means everything's going to go right in this world, and that's just not how it works.
It's
maddening.
It's absurd, and become. Now, coaches create this themselves. I mean, I'm Division II one day, I'm Drake the next. Thanks for the Division I opportunity. I'm leaving and going to Iowa. Okay, well, I mean, money plays a major role in that.
And also, you can't blame the guy. Like, we can't blame Ben McCollum for being like, oh, I go to Drake, it's a great opportunity. Right. I can go coach Drake, and then all of a sudden get me the opportunity to Iowa.
Right.
You can't. Like,
Darian DeVries, you put him in the Big 12? No, I'm going to go to the Big 10. Okay. 1 year. Kevin Willard's out there outlining his problems. Now, let's get to Tom Izzo. I can't say enough good things about Tom Izzo.
Yeah.
Just, look, decades of small interactions here and there. He was asked yesterday, either yesterday or the day before, it doesn't matter, about the transfer portal. And he says, look, I can't talk about that right now. He says, look, I'm trying to concentrate on this team, this moment, this whatever. And then some people have been like, oh, look how snarky he was. Look, grow a spine, will you? He does owe it to this team. That's why you have today bigger staffs. Because you do have a segment of your staff that can concentrate and is allowed to concentrate on that part of it.
Yeah.
Okay? That's allowed to sit there and go, hey, let's take a look at the roster in the future. We'll have a meeting when the season's over. But as the coach, you owe it to the current team to coach the current team. You can't be constantly in that position looking to the next group the next season. You have other people on the staff where it's their job to look at, let's look at the recruiting class, and we'll make sure you're looped into it, okay? Because you're the head coach. We work for you.
We'll give you updates. Right? We'll say how everything's going so far.
This is the transfer portal. This is what we see. Because there's going to be a point where you do have to concentrate on it, right? Or at least make sure that, let's be involved in what's going on. But the way the NCAA and basketball, football has somewhat of an excuse calendar-wise because of the semester. It's right there in the middle.
Yeah.
Right, so it gets a little sloppy. Basketball doesn't have that issue.
As we just said yesterday, you can extend it. Let's say the Open opens up April 8th, the day after the finals happens. You open up April 8th, you close it May 8th. You give it a month.
Right.
You close it at the end of the semester because most schools wrap up in May. Close it then.
Okay, people are already enrolled in their current schools to begin with. Okay. You open it up after everybody's done. Then you do it because it's exponentially more seamless than the football calendar is because of the semester break. You don't have that. That's why when I've talked about the NBA draft as opposed to the NFL draft, the NFL draft, you've got to make a declaration, and then once you say you're in, they only give you about a week, 10 days to pull out, whatever it is. And then that's you're in, you're in. With the NBA draft, because of the calendar, you can go and work out. You can go to the NBA Combine, the G League Combine, the whole thing, and then they give you a withdrawal date that is early in June where you can opt to go back to school or stay in the NBA draft. And it's exponentially more seamless because guess what? It's not interfering with anything else. And you have greater flexibility this year because college basketball will expand the roster to 15. So you can sit there as a coach and you can fill your roster up to 13, 14 guys, and you got a guy going through the NBA, you can leave a spot open. You don't have to worry about it. In the past, you may have had to worry about it.
Yeah, you don't have to.
This particular year, you don't have to. All right? But that's why opening up the transfer portal on March 24th makes zero sense. You can't wait 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's all you got to do is wait 2 weeks, 15 days.
And you know what else it'll do? It'll mean all of the coaches who end up changing jobs can change, and then all of a sudden the portal opens up, then players enter. They know who the coach is in every location versus just a circus.
Look, they're going to have they'll have the ability over 2 weeks to have meetings with the new players and say, hey, what are you thinking of doing? I'm thinking about entering the transfer portal. I said, okay.
A coach can come in, let's say Richard Pitino, Xavier can go in and say, okay, these are the players who are here right now. Let me talk with each of you, see what you want to do. And then I can actually prepare myself for what's going to happen.
Exactly.
It's almost like we're smart, Steve.
Thank you for listening to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a 7 Mountain Media production. Come back at 11 every weekday for analysis of the latest happening in the sports landscape. From college football to European soccer, Steve and Kyle cover it all on